Today's episode is brought to you by Fizzle, because sometimes being a business owner feels like bare naked bravery. Fizzle provides new entrepreneurs with a wealth of honest online business training and a community of fellow entrepreneurs who won't let you quit. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life, so if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Dr. Chris Friesen is a psychologist who, like me, and probably you too, has always been fascinated by what makes people successful. He is a licensed clinical, forensic, and neuropsychologist, but now primarily helps professional, national, Olympic, and up-and-coming elite athletes, as well as other high-achieving professionals, entrepreneurs, executives, academics, and creatives. He helps them all achieve their personal and professional potential. And currently, he's the director of the Friesen Sport and Performance Psychology, a contributor for Success.com, and he's also author of the book Achieve, Find Out Who You Are, What You Really Want, and How to Make It Happen. However, in today's episode, we kick things off by talking about the darker side of success, what failure teaches us, and how to be brave when we're having those bathroom floor moments. I'm really looking forward to hearing all about his personal and professional point of view on all of this and more. Dr. Friesen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super pumped to be here.
Yeah. So, okay, let's jump right into the bare naked bravery. I'm curious what your personal answer might be to this question. What do your bathroom floor moments look like?
I don't have a lot of bathroom floor moments these days. I've had them in the past, no doubt. These come up for me when life just seems overwhelming and I feel like I don't have enough time to get things done. I don't quite hit the bathroom floor, but in my head, I'm pretty close.
They don't have to happen in the bathroom.
I assume so. But to me, my bathroom floor moments come. I'm actually writing the second book in this series of the High Achievement Handbook. And at the end of the week, when I run out of time to do what I call my real job, that takes up most of my time. And then not having enough time to actually do my book, I start to have these moments where I think, I'm never going to get this done. This is never going to happen. And we can talk a lot about how to deal with those thoughts. And I try to practice what I preach when I have those negative thoughts. How do I cope with those? But I'll let you ask the question.
I mean, what do you think triggers them?
I think they're totally normal. Our Yeah, this is a gigantic issue when it comes to everyone, when it comes to people trying to achieve big things, when it comes to people dealing with just negative emotions and bad moods. Our brains are programmed to think negatively. We all do this. Some of us do it more than others. The key is to allow those thoughts to actually happen, allow those emotions to take place. The research suggests, in my experience and my own personal experience and my experience with working with others, really backs this up, that the more you fight your negative thoughts, the more you try to squash them, they just keep coming back harder. So let's say you're having negative thoughts, like I was describing my book, I'm never going to finish the book, I'm never going to get the time. These thoughts are usually exaggerated, and to remind yourself that these thoughts are normal, my brain is programmed to think these things, and I can use it to motivate me, or I can use it, I can let it destroy me. And that's really what it comes down to.
You're working on your second book, which I'm so excited to read. And my first book includes a lot of the stories of my experience as having an eating disorder in high school. And then also just generally as an artist, you're finding inspiration from all over the place, including some really dark moments in my life and other people's lives. And in my book, one of the biggest suggestions, like tangible, here's what you can do when shit hits the fan, is write it out. Like, do stream of consciousness, write it out, because that's been the most helpful task, like daily practice for me, to just give myself at least 15 minutes to let those bathroom floor moments happen as much as they want.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I'm saying. It's so similar. There's sort of a paradigm shift when it comes to treating clinical problems, and also just the way our brains and our psyches work, whether you're a super high achiever, or whether whatever your goals are, it doesn't really matter. The idea of trying to really shut down those thoughts and pretend they're not happening, or to distract yourself, is actually the worst thing you can do. There's lots of new research coming out on this. The harder you suppress, the harder they come back. So I'll just give you a quick example. So I've worked a lot with people with obsessive compulsive disorder. Often the clinical disorder, people will have a lot of strange thoughts that are not really congruent with what they think. So a silly example would be, you're at a subway station, you don't feel suicidal, but you keep having thoughts of, what if I just jumped in front of that train? We all have those thoughts occasionally, but most of the time we realize they're just a strange thought, and we let it go, and we acknowledge, oh wow, I just had this crazy thought, wow, interesting, my brain is weird, we let it go because we've acknowledged the thought. But at the same time, people with OCD, what they tend to do is get really upset that they had the thought, try and squash the thought, and what happens is the thought just keeps popping out. I call it the whack-a-mole problem. You go to a fair and you have the whack-a-mole game, and the mole just keeps wanting to pop its head out, and your job is to smack it down. But when it comes to our own negative thoughts, obviously the mole is the negative thoughts. The more you smack it down, the mole just keeps popping up somewhere else. So I say the mole just wants to be heard, wants to come out, and wants to be acknowledged. And the mole may come out again, may not, probably won't come out as much if you let the mole just be there.
I think you just, like, whack-a-mole pretty much describes the sensation it feels like to have an eating disorder. It's just a constant whack-a-mole.
Yes.
Constant.
Yes. It's interesting because my wife is a psychologist as well. she works specifically in an eating disorders clinic. And
I want to talk to her.
Okay. I'll let her know.
Okay.
And so there's, as you know, I won't go into details, but different types, like anorexic, as far as I understand. I don't work with a lot of eating disorder clients, but they, tend to have more of a over-controlling style. And this whack-a-mole issue is really big, really trying to suppress these thoughts. But again, the research is really showing, and just allowing your thoughts, being forgiving of yourself for having those thoughts. We all have body image issues to some extent. It's partly to do with media and society and these ideals nobody can really achieve. And so the idea of allowing yourself to have those thoughts, but using those as a starting point or as motivation to help you do something that's actually productive. And I think the key is to really focus on what's important to you.
Focusing on what's really important to you. I mean, is that like you have a strange thought, and then do you immediately try to make a connection to what's important to you?
No, not necessarily. It depends. So you have to think of, is this thought helpful? Does this thought lead me to do something productive and useful? In psychology terms, we call this productive versus unproductive worry. So we've all worried. So we can worry about, we're going on a trip and we're worried about, what if I get a flat tire? So that could be a thought that pops into your head. So you can think, well, can I do something about that? Yeah, actually I can. I can check the tire pressure in my cars before we take this long trip. Or if it's like, what if, I'm just making this up, a cow gets blown into the road and it hits our car. There's nothing you can actually do to prepare for that. So when you have productive worry, it means you can do something about it. When you have an unproductive thought that there's nothing you can do about it, you sort of allow that thought to be there and then you move on. So for example, if you go to a party and you have a thought, I am the least attractive person here. And maybe there's some objective measure that you could test that and figure out, technically I am. So even if the thought's true, you have to ask yourself, is it helping me in any way to focus on this thought? Not necessarily to have the thought. We all have thoughts like that. It's whether you focus on it and say, look, is there anything I can do about this? Well, technically I can't change my appearance at this point. I'm already at the party and I just have to acknowledge I'm having the thought and focus on, why did I come here? I came here to maybe meet some people, to talk to friends, to have a good time. And you can sort of do a little quick check with yourself, is focusing on that thought that I may be the least attractive person here. Is it going to help me have a good time? Probably not. So the key though is to really think about what your values are, what your purpose is, what your goals are, and then think, is this thought going to help me get closer to those things, or is it going to take me farther away? So you really want to live your life based on your values, your goals, and your purpose.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. How does this concept show up with your athletic clients? Like, do you have any stories?
Sure, yeah. People who are on the big stage. Right now I'm working with one particular person that's going to the Olympics in Rio.
Exciting.
Very exciting, yeah, very exciting. And I'm not going to use that person as a specific example, but when you have a big event, you're going to have all kinds of doubting thoughts. And I tell people, it's really good to have doubting thoughts. And we all have them. Again, we all have doubting thoughts about our ability. I've had doubting thoughts about my ability to write my book, my ability to finish my PhD. These thoughts are all normal. And as soon as you make that shift and you realize, hey, having these doubting thoughts is totally normal, then you're going to be less harsh on yourself for having them. And they're not going to control you as much. So I tell people that these can have, let's say you're doubting your ability, you're going to the Olympics, you're doubting your talents and your ability. Well, that's actually useful because you can use that to motivate yourself to train harder or get to the gym, or stick to if you're in a weight class sport, to stick to a particular diet. That you can use that as motivation to basically keep you going. So those thoughts are good, because I tell people, I have people come to me and say, look, I have a big performance I have to, do a big presentation in front of investors, or I'm going to the Olympics, whatever it may be. I feel anxious. I don't want to have any anxiety, because I believe, mistakenly though, that no anxiety or no doubts is actually good for my performance. And I say, well, the first thing I need to tell you is you don't want that. If you really think about it, having no anxiety, no self-doubt, would you prepare really hard, or do you think you might underestimate your competition? And the answer is yes, right? So you need that.
Well, not only that, but I have seen this time and time again with my students and my songwriting students, is that the second you get apathetic is the second the song turns to total shit, or performance turns to shit, and you are just like, yeah, whatever. And everyone in the audience and everyone in the room can feel that apathy. And
yes,
I think that apathy is another one of those darker sides of this motivation. Anxiety is with it, but it's like the complete opposite side of the spectrum. Anxiety is too much worry, and apathy is not enough.
That's a great point, because there's something in psychology we call the Yerkes-Dodson law, and this is called...
I'm writing all this down.
Oh, you okay?
So that we can refer to it in the show notes. So
awesome.
Keep talking.
Yeah, Google that. The psychologists figured this out probably 100 years ago now. It's a reason it's called a law, not like a theory or an idea. It's one of those few behavioral science laws that just seem to be replicated again and again. So what this really means is exactly what you're saying.
What's it called again?
Yerkes-Dodson law.
Okay.
And I can tell you the spelling after. But so what it really means is we perform best when we have a moderate level of arousal or activation or anxiety. So going into a concert, for example, having low anxiety, like very low anxiety, like you said, leads to apathy, leads to a poor performance. Going into a concert with extremely high anxiety leads to poor performance. Going into a concert with moderate levels of anxiety leads to peak performance. And this has been replicated in every context you can imagine. Of course, if you're a power lifter versus a chess player, the curve is going to be shifted, to the right or to the left. So obviously, when you're a power lifter, your level of moderate arousal is going to be a lot higher than the moderate arousal for a chess player.
Right.
Or if you're singing, for example. That's probably a better example.
Yeah. A little background on me. About 3-4-ish years ago, I was diagnosed with a hand tremor, like an essential hand tremor.
Right.
And so whenever I perform now, it's one of the main reasons I do singing, songwriting stuff now more so than cello, because it's in my bow hand and I can't control the tremor when I have adrenaline running through me. Like it gets so bad when I've got adrenaline running through me. And I know enough about performance just from over the years to know that like the adrenaline is good for the performance.
Yes.
I need it in order to play really well, but
exactly.
My body won't let me do it with the cello. So
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's true, right? So it would worsen when your anxiety or arousal levels are higher. And there's all sorts of strategies we can help people that I use to help people to get it down to a more manageable level. One simple strategy, which you just displayed right now, is how you describe it. So if you go in and you feel anxious and you say, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to barf, I'm super anxious. Oh, I'm feeling fear. Instead, if you allow yourself to have those thoughts, say it's normal. Of course, I'm feeling this way, but also to relabel them, and remind yourself, I'm feeling pumped. I need a certain level of adrenaline to perform at my best. I need to be anxious or I'm going to underperform. It's interesting because I talk about this in my book, of course, but a lot of my research background is in personality, like normal personality traits that we all differ on. One of the main ones it's got different names in the literature. I call it negative emotions or susceptibility to negative emotions and stress. So we all fall along a continuum, with most of us near the middle. You can think of a bell curve. With some of us, half the population is technically on the high side, half is on the low side. So people who are high on this tend to feel more anxious easily, get more panicky under stressful situations, tend to have more negative emotions in general, like more irritability, maybe down moods, that kind of thing. People who are lower, obviously the opposite. So the idea is a lot of peak performers are high on this. And the reason is, and a lot of artists are high on this. A lot of actors are high on this. A lot of singers and performers are high on this. A lot of athletes are high on this. And the key is, though, if you're able to use kind of the stuff we're talking about, you can use that energy that it provides you to perform at your peak. So a lot of people think mistakenly that all anxiety is bad, all negative emotions is bad, and that's so far from the truth. We need that. So I'll give you one quick example. If you're singing a song and, in that song, I'm thinking like opera. This might not be the perfect example, but you're representing a character or the feeling of the song. And if you're really low naturally on the personality dimension of negative emotions, you're going to have a hard time, first of all, getting yourself up to feel that emotion, but also empathizing with the character or the mood you're trying to portray in the song. So that's why, a lot of famous and high-level performers do have high levels of negative emotions, but they just use the energy it provides them and capitalize on it and perform even better than someone who would be low on that kind of negative emotions.
That makes so much sense.
Good.
You have just clarified so much for me.
I'm glad. It's so huge, man. I can't even with myself in my own life, it's, this is just so huge once you start to understand this. And it's not just some psychobabble. This is really based on hardcore research, and it's been really changing over the years. So it's, I think to me, it's a breakthrough.
Yeah. I mean, when you can start to learn to use your constraints as a tool rather than the brick wall that needs to be climbed over, the entire world ironically opens up for you.
Yes, it's so true. And as I say in my book, all of our personality traits are both our strengths and our weaknesses.
Yep.
So there's a big push these days in a lot of, like, let's say, positive psychology, which is a popular term these days. The real positive psychology researchers don't fall into this trap, but a lot of the pop psychology books that focus on this really over-focus on the positive emotions and being positive and all that. But the reality is,
which makes me want to gag.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Definitely me as well. Because the reality is that is not necessarily the ideal. Of course, you don't want to be depressed all day and suicidal. That's the opposite extreme.
Of course.
But all of our emotions are extremely useful, and they can make us live a fuller life if you can embrace them. But if you fight them, you're guaranteed to have a lot of, as the Dalai Lama says, you're going to have a lot of suffering. Everyone's going to experience pain, but whether you experience suffering, really has to do with how hard you fight against some of your natural tendencies.
It's overwhelming to even talk about how many colors there are to paint with when you're talking about all of these emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so comforting to know that you don't have to fight against any of it.
Yeah, and the less you fight it, the more you're going to blossom. There's just no doubt. The research is repeatedly showing this. And
how have you seen that in your own life and in some clients' lives? If you're allowed to talk about them, that is.
I can't. I just don't. I can't share there too many facts about them because,
for sure,
for confidentiality reasons. But I see a lot of people coming in and really, again, wanting to be low negative emotions. They say, I don't want to have any anxiety. And they come in and I said, this is going to be a bit of a paradigm shift. But the problem is your attitude towards, I don't say it necessarily in those terms, but sometimes I'll be blunt. I'll say it's your attitude towards these negative emotions that is the problem, not the negative emotions themselves. And that's usually not what people want to hear because feeling negative emotions can be very uncomfortable. What we've gotten away from in our society now is we have it so good, we have it so well now that we don't really experience a lot of hardship, a lot of pain. Think of 100 years ago. If we lived back then, we would be, farming all of our food. We'd have a lot more physical pains. Our nutrition wouldn't be as easy. Everything is so easy for us now. And so I think society sort of sends a message that one of your goals in life is to be happy, and to be happy really means to have an absence of pain. And that's actually not true at all. So I'll give you a silly example for myself. So One thing I do every morning, my wife, and everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I'm okay with it, is that I take a cold shower. I have not taken a cold shower. It's been almost exactly 1 year. I think in a couple of weeks it'll be 1 year. I've not taken a hot shower, in 1 year, only as cold as it goes. And I don't mean like putting it warm and then slowly making it cold at the end. I mean, there's no hot or warm water touching my body at all. And so it sounds, very masochistic.
That sounds awful.
But, there's many reasons. There's health reasons and all this. But psychologically what it does is every morning I still have those negative thoughts and that fear of pain. And I say, look, I don't really want to do this. This is going to suck. But I train myself to not get hooked or not listen to my thoughts. And I live my life more based on my values and goals. And so what I do is every time I have those negative predictions about how bad it's going to be or that I can't handle it or I should really have a hot shower today, and I do the cold shower anyways, I build up my belief in myself and my ability to handle difficult things.
It's more like a spiritual practice than it is like a tangible cold showers get me XYZ.
Yeah, at this point too, exactly. It's now a ritual. It's really, it wakes you up, does all these great things for your body, of course, but it's jarring, especially at the very first time you do it is the hardest time. After you've done it for about 4 days in a row, it starts to get easier. Then it sort of tapers off, but it's a lot easier for me to do it now than if you did it tomorrow or tonight, because my body is actually habituated to some extent, but I still have those negative thoughts. So I do try to make myself do difficult things, kind of be brave, right? And by doing that, I end up building my own resilience to stress and also the resilience to my own negativity, my own negative thoughts, and my own negative predictions. So that's a silly example that I do. In certain sports, you purposely train yourself. Let's say in wrestling, for example, Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling or freestyle, it doesn't matter. Basically, they train so hard and you train so much longer than an actual wrestling match. Then when you get to the actual competition, it's easy because you've gone through much more difficult
Oh,
times in training,
we do
right?
the same thing with music,
Yes.
but we do it with tempo. So if something's hard to play at the tempo you want to play it, then you learn how to play it at like an exorbitantly faster tempo.
Yes.
So by the time you actually play it at the tempo you want to play it, it's like easy peasy, no.
Exactly. And that's why when you practice in music, it's good to have these, I guess, practice sessions where people are watching you, for example. You try to make it as stressful as possible to mimic what it's going to be like in the real show. So it's so true. We really need to, again, I know I keep harping on this, but it really comes down to knowing your values, knowing your goals, and then the key to success. In one of my success.com articles, I write this. If there's one key to success, there's not, of course. If there's one thing, because I'm often asked, what's the one thing? But if there's one thing I could say that's really, really important, is that the most successful people, whether it's in sports, athletics, or entrepreneurship, whatever it is, or just happiness, meaningful lives, it doesn't matter. The most successful people are people who make their day-to-day decisions about what they do, not based on their moods, not based on their energy levels, not based on their circumstances, but based on their values and their goals. And when you do that, you're going to move forward in life. But if you live your life being a victim to your moods, your energy levels, you're never going to progress. So you need to push yourself beyond your limits and face things that are fearful. You have to be brave, in other words. It's really just bravery, what I'm describing.
It's no secret that I offer mentorship to creatives, entrepreneurs, and other folks looking to build their bravery. But when a business owner is simply in need of some really straightforward training and camaraderie, I send them to the guys at Fizzle. Fizzle is an online membership site which helps entrepreneurs grow their business, revenue, and fulfillment until they're crackling with creativity, impact, potential, and purpose. Now, there are two definitions of the word fizzle. Did you know? The first is to fail in a weak and disappointing way, which is actually what most businesses end up doing. But the second definition is to buzz or crackle like an exposed electrical wire. And you know what? You wouldn't hear all that buzzing or crackling and fizzling if there weren't an intense amount of energy or potential in those wires. The Fizzle community exists because, number one, it's hard to build a good online business. Most ideas fizzle out. And number two, for the entrepreneurial type like myself, there's a lot of energy and potential running through the wires. Everyone inside Fizzle is putting their butt on the line to build something they care about. And when you own a business, it's natural to hit roadblocks, lose steam, search for direction. But Fizzle helps its members get clarity and take the very next step. They've got some really excellent courses from real experts and a community of like-minded business builders. The courses all focus on concrete, actionable steps. The community is incredible, and there's no smarmy tactics or marketing schemes, just real people building honest websites, products, and services. If you've ever worked on a project alone, you know how much of a game changer an active community makes. It's easy to join Fizzle. Your first 2 weeks are free. After that, if you choose to stick with it, membership is only $35 a month. Visit barenaked.bravery.com/fizzle to get started. That's Fizzle.
I remember when I was in graduate school, I always knew I wanted to work with sort of high-achieving individuals, but I still like working with people who are, at the bottom part of their lives. And I knew that through my training, it'd be one of my only chances to work with the hardest people I could possibly work with. That's why I'm a forensic and neuropsychologist. So I worked in and got my training in working in the prison system, working with people who've murdered their children, like things like that, like having to assess them and talk to them, or I've worked with pedophiles. These things put me way out of my comfort zone. But I knew that if I just listened to my anxiety, I would have just ran out the door and just not volunteer, put up my hand. I'll see that person. Oh, she killed her kids. I'm up. I'm going to do it. I'm feeling anxious really inside. I'm thinking, I don't want to do this, but I'm thinking, no, this is good for me. I need to see this. I need to see everything because it's going to challenge me. It's going to make me a better psychologist. It's going to make me a better person because I've seen people and done things that are really uncomfortable that are going to help me with my goals, which is to be the best psychologist I can be.
Yeah. I mean, how did you help someone who killed their kids or is pedophile or has been at the bottom of the rungs of their life, how did you help them discover their values? I mean, is that your job? And how do you...
Yeah, so working with the person who killed her kids, just as an example, I ended up assessing her. I didn't actually treat her, just for the sake of honesty. But I've assessed and treated people who have killed other people, that kind of thing. So, it's difficult. Some people you work within the forensic system, some people are psychopaths, and their values are very warped, and they are temperamentally, in other words, their personality is much different than ours. They have usually the pure psychopaths have very low anxiety. That's one of the reasons why they get into trouble throughout their lives, because a lot of what we learn about what's right and wrong were learned when we were little kids, when we were scolded and we did something wrong and we felt bad, we felt guilty, we felt anxious when the teacher pointed us out. And so we never did that again. We learned. But psychopathic individuals, they don't learn those things. Let's say as an extreme example is working with someone who's psychopathic, the trick really is to figure out what do they want to achieve. Most of them don't want to come back to jail. It's not like they have fun there or they like it. Most of them don't really want to be there. So you have to kind of meet them on their level and work together. Say, look, I think we both agree here that the goal is for you not to come back to jail. We know what the solution is. Let's work together to come up with a solution so you don't, if you're like a psychopath that sexually abuses children, for example, despite you may have some physical sexual urges, this is going to hurt you because they don't really care about the victims. Pure psychopaths do not care about the victims. So the idea is, what is in your best interest? Your best interest is not to come back here. So let's work together. That's the one common ground we can work on. That's your new motto is, I don't want to come back to jail. And you have some needs, which is needs for thrills. Usually these individuals like highly thrilling things. And so, we got to find other ways to get these needs met, like jumping out of airplanes, stuff like that. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
Well, basically you're saying in order to find your values, just start with anything you want and like nestle yourself down into what the core value is. So like, I really value macaroni and cheese. And then wiggling down to, oh no, I actually really value comfort.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true. Exactly. We all have needs, and I talk about personality in terms of needs as well. So if you're, let's say, an extrovert versus an introvert, people are extroverted, obviously. In my book, I really define it more as, I didn't come up with this, extroversion is really your external stimulation tolerance, whether it's social, whether it's not, whether it's like you just like to be, in high-paced, fast environments, because extroverts really are, besides being gregarious and social, they tend to also like thrills. They're more thrill seekers. They're not psychopaths. There's a commonality there, but that's as far as they overlap. They tend to experience a lot of positive emotions. So if you're really extroverted and you have like a very introverted job, let's say you're a librarian as a typical example, you're going to have all these needs that need to be met from just a personality perspective. So after work, you're going to have to do all these social, exciting, exuberant, positive, emotion-pulling activities to feel normal. Whereas an introvert, let's say you're an introvert stuck in an extrovert's job, let's say, typical example, sales, where you have to talk to people all day. Introverts get overstimulated really easily. So at night, after work, you're going to have to really recharge and spend some time reading books or just one-on-one with people in a much more lower key situation. So knowing that your personalities can also be considered your needs. And then the interesting thing is personality isn't really changeable. It is to some extent, but it's not easily changeable. But your values are easily changeable. Even single experiences can change your values. For example, people become vegan. They may see a documentary on how animals are treated, and right away that could change their values when it comes to eating. Doesn't mean they don't like the taste of beef and burgers and hot dogs and chicken nuggets anymore. It just means that now they're making their decisions on whether to eat those things more based on their values of not wanting to hurt animals, let's say, as opposed to their sort of urges to, eat something really tasty. So
what about this person that has a value that they would like to replace with something else?
So you mean you want to change your values?
Yeah. Like, if you start to notice, oh gosh, I'm going to use the macaroni and cheese example. I would like to not value comfort so much.
Okay. That's an interesting example. There's probably a reason most people want that comfort. It could be that People who tend to gravitate towards more comfort foods or comforting activities tend to be higher on the personality dimension of negative emotions because they feel a lot of negative emotions, and then when they indulge in these comforting things, they feel relief and they feel good. People who are high on negative emotions tend to be more impulsive in the sense that and I'm a little bit high on negative emotions, so I have some experience with this, tend to have troubles stopping themselves from doing things they know they should not do. In other words, that are not in line with their values. So, for example, eating ice cream at night. It's uncomfortable to resist because it brings up negative feelings, negative emotions to resist. It's hard. It feels uncomfortable to say no. So, that's something you should, if you're high on negative emotions, that's something you're going to be more likely to fall victim to. And so you really need to, I'll give you an example. So if you have an urge to do something like eat macaroni and cheese, one simple hack or trick is to wait 5 minutes, put your timer on, 5 or 10 minutes, whatever you want, put your timer on, and then decide if you really want that comforting, macaroni and cheese. Of course, there could be other ways to obtain that comfort. On the other hand, if you feel like you're constantly looking for comfort, there's obviously there's other ways to reduce stress, for example, that you should incorporate more into our lives. That could help. And, simply refocusing on what's important to us. Like, is eating the macaroni and cheese, is it really in line with what my bigger goals or my values or the type of person I want to be? Is it in line with that? Of course, in the moment, if the macaroni is cooked, it's right in front of you, 1 inch from your face, it's going to be pretty much impossible to resist that temptation. So, you have to do some environmental engineering, we call it, which is not have that. Let's say ice cream is a better example. What I did, I removed, basically ice cream from the house. Or I did something like this. What I'll do, and I talk about this in the book, I would have a decaf coffee and a protein bar, and then I'm fully allowed to have the ice cream after that. And the reality is, once you have the decaf coffee, the ice cream, and the protein bar, the urge to have the ice cream is gone. There's all sorts of things.
You're basically saying, ask yourself where the value comes from, and what need that value is meeting, and then environmentally try to address that need in other ways while you give yourself some space to make a new decision.
Yeah, I would say more. It's more like, what's the need that behavior is satisfying? Because our values are really just another fancy way of saying what is important to you, and or how do you want to be as a person. So, you could value the environment. You could value helping others. You could value living a peaceful life, for example. And, these are all things that ways of being. For example, living a peaceful life is a way of being and helping others. Valuing the environment is also just valuing a particular thing in the world. Or I think it's really important. In my book, of course, I have these measures people can take, and you can fill it out, and you can actually get more in touch with that. I used an example, which I've used myself, and I didn't come up with this exercise, but it's called the funeral exercise, where you imagine your funeral 10 years from now. Let's just say you died, and 10 years from today on this exact day, really sit down, imagine what you want people to say about you, your significant other, your parents, your coworkers, your teammates, whoever. What do you want them to say about you? Do you want them to say, yeah, this guy was just really into himself. He didn't really have time for people. He didn't care about the environment. Most people, when you think about what you want people to say about you, that's how you get in touch with your values. That'll help you figure out, what is really important to you. And it takes the filter of all the crap that's really in your face every day. Like, I think I value Facebook because I'm on it a lot, but in 10 years from now, is that going to really matter? I'm not saying Facebook is bad, but if you spend six hours a day on Facebook and you're not actually achieving any of the goals or living your life in line with your values, you're going to have an unhappy life. Even though in the moment on Facebook, you're getting these inklings of pleasure where you watch a cat video. Yesterday, I saw a cat video with a squirrel with 6 cats are all sleeping together. And, I felt great. It's precious. It's amazing, right? You feel great, and you get a dopamine rush in your brain, and it just makes you want to keep searching and looking for something else to give you another hit of pleasure. But the reality is, we got to be very careful because our environments are now being engineered for a lot of profit motive, right? So Facebook is full of ads, people often selling things, and you just have to take a step back and figure out what's really important to me. Should I be spending time with my 4-year-old, or should I be surfing Facebook? And it's really hard, though. It's just like the ice cream when it's right in front of you. When Facebook's right in front of you, it's really, really hard. So you have to make rules. Like, this is a personal example. So I'll, literally turn off my device or put it in another room. when I'm spending time with my 4-year-old. I fall victim to it all the time, that I get caught up in it. And then when I realize she's trying to get my attention and I'm on my phone, and I feel guilt. And that emotion, remember, it's not bad. I'm like, shouldn't feel guilt. Stop feeling guilt. I say, no, guilt is sending me a message. I'm living my life not congruent with my values. One of my big values is to be a good parent and to be there for my daughter, and to surf Facebook, even though it's pleasurable in the moment, is actually not helping me live a life congruent with values. And I know I'm talking a lot, but one thing.
No, that's what we're here to do. I am soaking this up like a sponge. Keep talking.
Well, one of the big things is we get the impression from social media and society that our goal in life is to be happy. And actually that is, I believe, and I'm not the only one, that this is not the goal in life. Goal in life is not to be happy. The goal in your life, the main goal, should be to have a purposeful or meaningful life. And the side effect is that you tend to feel happy and content. So, think about people, let's say Martin Luther King, just as an example, or Nelson Mandela, just as examples of people who went through some hard times. They probably weren't very happy, but they had a very meaningful life. And so when I say happy, I mean pleasurable, hedonic, life. But they had a meaningful life, and they would probably never give it up for something else. So think about when you watch a movie or read a book, you're probably, when you feel attracted to a character, it's usually not because, that guy, he's always having fun and play on Facebook, and he's, eating ice cream whenever he feels like it. Oh, that's so inspiring. You're inspired by people who overcome big and difficult things and live a life with meaning and purpose. That's what moves people. Watch any movie that's, that's what they're mostly about. And that means those are your values. Those are your values talking. And we're constantly seduced day to day by things that are trying to take away from that. I'll give you one quick example, another personal example. Yeah. I have a Camry hybrid car. I love the car. I love the hybrid, blah, blah, blah. But every once in a while, I see a new car. For example, there's a Lexus hybrid. It's exactly like my car. It's just a fancier version. It costs $60,000 instead of $30,000.
Isn't Lexus owned by the same company that Camry?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And so
the same engine, probably.
It's the same engine. It just looks nicer. And so I see the new ad, and I see, you get seduced. You're like, all of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, I need that Lexus. And I have to, and I go through this every couple of years. I get the urge to want to buy a new car. And then I think, what are my values? Well, one of my big values is to pay down my mortgage. And I have to remind myself. So I purposely don't go test drive Lexuses. I purposely stop myself from ever getting that close, because I'm just going to get seduced and make it a decision that makes me feel pleasure in the moment. But we know from the research that even if you win the lottery, buy a fancy car, buy a Porsche, whatever it may be, a Lexus, the happiness it produces is very short-lived. Within a few months, your happiness levels goes right back to where it was. So it's a seduction. And if you realize that society is often trying to seduce you away from what's really important to you, and you try and really focus on your values and your purpose and your mission, that kind of thing, you're going to be happier. There is some stress because you have to resist these temptations, but you're going to feel stronger because you're being brave. You're not giving into temptation. And by every time you don't give into temptation, you're building up your resilience, you're building up your bravery.
Okay, so let's switch gears here, because I totally agree with you.
Cool.
In a lot of different scenarios. I'm curious to know, how does belief in self integrate with bravery?
One of the biggest misunderstandings is that we need to convince ourselves that we're brave before we can be brave or do things that take bravery. And the research shows, and most people's personal experience will show you, it's actually the opposite. Bravery, the fancy term psychologists use, for example, is it's called self-efficacy. It's your belief in your ability to do something. But this is built through experience, not through self-talk or convincing yourself. So, for example, let's say you want to jump off the highest diving board at a swimming pool. You can convince yourself, or your friend can tell you, you can do it, it's no problem. That's one thing. But if you kind of jump off the medium level diving board and then you kind of move your way up, that's going to be much more convincing than it is to jump off the diving board. Or when I work with people who have phobias, so for example, I've worked with people who have a lot of car accidents, so they have a phobia of driving now. They don't want to drive on the highway, and they get panic attacks when they do, so they avoid it. So I tell them, look, we can talk until we're blue in the face about what are the statistics about how dangerous driving really is, etc. That's sort of helpful. It's not a waste of time, but we can actually fix this phobia really quickly if we just get you in the car, over and over again, and you ride the wave. In other words, you allow yourself to feel the anxiety that comes with being brave. That's the definition of courage, right? Is to basically do something that you're afraid to do despite your fear. Not to, if you do something you have no fear, like jumping out of an airplane, you've done it 1,000 times, or you have this naturally low anxiety. That's not really bravery or courage. But if you're really anxious about doing it and then you do it, that is actually the definition of courage. Is when you face something that's fearful, you feel the fear, you don't let it control your actions, and you do it anyways. So
you're saying basically like the big, huge moments that everyone always shines a light on about, oh, wow, that person's so brave, and Rosa Parks sure did sit in that chair real good. That was probably built upon small moments of this self-efficacy that you're talking about, like building this kind of bravery and becoming more comfortable outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah, I don't know about Rosa Parks, but I know all about her, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure she did, or I'm sure she felt anxious when she did it, and that was being brave and having courage. So that is the trick, is you face your fears over and over again, and then your brain is much more convinced. In other words, you become less anxious and more brave the more you've had personal experience doing it. So you can watch other people doing brave things. That helps. You can try and convince yourself with positive self-statements. Actually, the research shows that positive affirmations backfire. So if you are kind of low self-esteem, average to low self-esteem, research shows that if you try to use positive affirmations for saying great things about yourself, good things, it actually backfires. Instead, if you're allowed to think negative thoughts about yourself and do it anyways, that's what works. So really making yourself do things you're scared of. And of course, the trick is to do stuff in baby steps. So I'll give you another example. The first time I got called...
What About Bob is my favorite movie.
What About Bob? Yeah. So is that Bill Murray? I'm forgetting now.
Yeah, it's Bill Murray.
Okay.
And the main character is a psychologist who wrote a book called Baby Steps.
Oh, yeah. I got to watch that one again. I saw it when I was a teenager. That's hilarious. It's true. It sounds almost cliche, but that's the reality. If you for example, a fear of driving. Let's say someone gets a panic attack, even sitting in a parked car. Well, the first step, we don't just jump on the highway. We sit in the parked car for like an hour until the anxiety starts to come down. Then we get out, and next time we start the car. And then the next time we drive around the parking lot. Then the next time we drive around the streets. And we keep going up, and we get used to feeling the anxiety and realize that the anxiety is normal. Our bodies, our brains are meant to feel anxiety. It's like revving your engine in your car. It's a normal thing. It's good. It's meant to do that. You're not going to die if you feel anxious. It may be uncomfortable. It's just like working out. Working out can hurt, but it's not going to kill most people, hopefully, but it's actually good for you, even though it's painful. So things that are painful, to some extent, are actually good for you because they allow you to grow, build bravery, build courage.
Yeah. Oh, man. Baby steps. That's so great. I'm sorry. I hope you don't take offense to that, but
I don't at all.
So much.
That's hilarious. I got to watch that one again. But it's true. There's was that Billy Crystal or someone? I can't remember who the psychologist was back then.
Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name.
I can picture Billy Crystal, but who knows? But it's true.
I'll put a link to the movie and
definitely do that
in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so glad that you got to do this, and I would love to interview you some more about some more topics too in the future, especially when your next book comes out.
That would be awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so beyond the Bare Naked Bravery adult coloring book, your brave takeaway for today's show is a packet that Dr. Friesen and I have put together, which includes his personality rating tool and his values survey tool, and a list of some of the specific things that make people so successful. On that brave takeaway and in the show notes too, you'll be able to find a link to his book. And if you like listening to your books, his book is also available in audiobook format on iTunes or by signing up for an account at Audible. Go to barenakedbravery.com/audible to get started right now. Thank you for listening today. Dr. Friesen and I are both on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and more, and we've put all the links in the show notes again for today's episode. So be sure to go visit us online for all of that. Just go to barenakedbravery.com and do a quick little search for Dr. Friesen. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it for you, then please give us a review and rate us in the iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. It helps us out so much, and all this bravery deserves to be spread far and wide as possible, so you are a part of that. If you have not seen the Bare Naked Bravery coloring book, then you definitely need to do that as soon as possible, because it is jaw-dropping awesome. It features more than 11 artists from all kinds, from all over the world, which means you can make the art from your fellow Bare Naked Bravery listeners come to life while you listen to the show. We all would love for you to post your finished pages on Instagram. So after you download it, color it all in and show it off and tag us in the posts. Download the whole thing, the whole book for free, or you can purchase the paperback version by visiting barenakedbravery.com/color. And not only that, but you get to vote on 4 of your favorite brave charities to receive the proceeds from the coloring book, which is really neat and generous of the artists who have joined us on this. So again, just visit barenakedbravery.com/color for more information. If you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, please visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm looking forward to being with you this next week. We have some great things in store for you, and until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself. Be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.